The Honourable Maurice Williamson.
Mr Speaker, it's a great delight to take part in this, my 10th address and reply debate. And boy, have I seen things change over the millennium that I have been here, sir. And I want to pay tribute tonight, sir, to a very special group of New Zealanders. I've heard so many of the speakers pay tributes to their party or their leader, or them, and in fact, in many cases, to themselves. Pay a lot of tribute to themselves. But so I want to pay tribute to a special group of New Zealanders, and that's the voters. Because, sir, they once again have shown that they are actually quite a common sense block of several million people who will make a determination about what's right and what's not. And, sir, I've held a view for decades that voters only vote on really two things. It's a good lesson if members would like to listen. I'm actually doing this to be helpful. They actually only vote on two things: their hip pocket and their kids' future. And they take every one of the issues that are up for judgment and they actually bring it down to even one more simple little test. And the test goes like this, and if members from the Labour Party listen, I think this will be helpful. The test goes like this: is this lot heading in the right direction, delivering a reasonable set of outcomes, or are they tired and arrogant and out of touch and it's time for a change? And Mr Speaker, I've been around this place when I've seen the public make that judgment in both directions. I was here in 1990 when National really only just had to show up. Labor was so dishevelled, we're in such a shambles. Phil Goff lost Roskilde, Trevor Mallard lost Hamilton West, Annette King lost Horowhenua. They were absolutely stuffed, and National only just had to be there on the day. But I've been there on the other side of the coin. In 1999, sir, no matter what we tried to do to stem the hemorrhaging flow of voters that were rushing out of the body corporate called National, we could not stop it. And every day we used to sit there and say, right, we're going to launch the next policy and this will make a change, and we announced it, and 2 nights later the polling came in and we'd gone another 2 points down in the polls. And sir, I was around in 2002 when it was quite clear that the public thought that Labor were heading in the right direction, they were doing the right things, and that National wasn't offering a time for a change mix. So that's the simple formula that the voting public use. Now, sir, not every voter does that, I accept that. There's around about a 40% block of voters that are hardline, left-wing, pretty much either Labor or Green, and if you add them together, they'll fluctuate around that 40%. And there's about 40% of the general voting public that sit to the right of centre, mainly National, bit of ACT sometimes, and it only has a bit of a fluctuation. And then there's a 15 to 20% middle group of New Zealanders who really do want to move according to where they think their best interests lie. And so those voting categories are quite simple. At the last election, we picked up 47% party vote for National. That's about 7% more than that core hardline right wing. If you take the Greens and Labor together, they got 36%. So they're down about 4% on their core. And then you can spread the rest across, what was it, 8.6 for New Zealand First and about 4% for the Conservatives and so on. But in the end, the voters made a little bit like the mythical reef fish, where millions of reef fish can be swimming in one direction and all of a sudden decide to change and go another direction. They make no sound, scientists can't work out how they did it, but the million reef fish communicate with each other by some unknown way and make the right decision. And the voters this time around, sir, I'm not making any claims for future elections. All I'm telling the voters, telling the members of this House, is that voters made the determination this time that the country was going in the right direction, and that things were pretty good overall. There are often things they don't like. Voters don't get 457 votes. If they did, they would say National's been good on this, but Labor's better on that, and I like the Greens on this. They just get the one vote. They just get the one vote, the party vote. And so they have to actually amalgamate all of their views across the whole spectrum of things and make a decision. And with regards to that, sir, I want to pay a huge tribute to Bill English, because, sir, he deserves the gold star for Finance Minister's management of an economy over the last 6 years. Now, why do I say that? it's a little bit like I argue that teachers should be based on performance pay. And the teachers come back and say, we don't want performance pay, that's not fair, it's not right. If you've got a decile 1 with kids who are being abused at home and not being fed, the teacher will never be able to have the same outcomes as a teacher who's got a decile 10 with fantastic parents with lots of money. And I agree with them. And I absolutely agree with them. But what I'd like the performance pay for teachers to be based on is the difference that they make. Is whether they take somebody who was really, really poor and lifted them up to quite good, as opposed to maybe a decile 10 teacher who took stunning kids and just kept them about there. And you know what? The same thing applies with Bill English's finance minister. Anyone can be a good finance minister when the world is booming, when there are economic surpluses, when you've got money coming out of your pockets, as Michael Cullen did. He didn't know what to spend it on. He had surpluses that he didn't know what to do with. And yeah, because the world, don't let Labor take too much credit for this, because the world was booming, the world economy. And then what happened? Suddenly during the course of the year 2008, the election year, the world almost fell out of bed. And a whole global financial crisis swept across it. And at the end of that year, after New Zealand was already in recession, poor old Bill English becomes the new Minister of Finance. And so I'd have to say that would be the worst timing that anyone's ever had in their appointment to a new job. And you would have been able to sort of almost excuse a Minister of Finance saying, well, look, under the circumstances, it's been just so hard, we've mucked up, but we had very little option. And that's what happened in Greece and Turkey and Spain, and you can go through them in Ireland and so on. But no, Sir Bill English sat down, mapped out with ministers a definitive plan about how to manage the spending of this country without cutting it with a slasher, about making sure that good public services were delivered, better public services were delivered with the amount of money that was there, so that what was the focus was how many operations do we get in our hospitals, not what the funding level is, sir. And if I could say to the members of this House in the last 3 minutes I've got, please, when you're developing policy, focus on outcomes and drop the dogma about deliverables and the old adage of who used to be doing what. Because look at this idea that Michael Joseph Savage walked down a pathway and opened the new State House. Look, I'm sorry, that's in the 30s. We need to start looking at, and I don't think we've got a difference of view about what the end outcome is. The end outcome is to deliver some quality housing for people who are in need. I don't think we've got a disagreement on that. But does the state need to own that building, or does it need to facilitate access to its use? Does it need to fund by way of accommodation supplement? Does it need to provide some incentive payments? Because, sir, I don't know what your view of a lot of government agencies are, but in my view, some of them are pretty fat, dumb and lazy. And you could strip out some fat from government agencies, and that would allow for a much more efficient, much more productive delivery of the same outcomes. So Labor's got to drop their dogma. They get stuck back in the old days of, oh, well, you know, we're still in the trade union movement and so on, and the boss class are trying to drive the workers into the ground. Rubbish! Absolute rubbish. If you're an employer in this country, your greatest asset, sir, is your workforce. And you know that you treat them well, your outcome, your productivity, your efficiency will go through the roof. And I think, you know, of course there's a couple of ratbag employers out there, because like there's a couple of ratbag MPs. But sir, in general, the vast bulk of employers know what they're on about. And so I say once again to these members, focus on the outcomes. Take, for example, the asset sale issue. I was just gobsmacked by Labor was opposing the sale of assets. Sir, many of the asset class the government currently owns is rooted in the 1920s. Hydroelectricity dams that were built then. How about we start focusing on the new asset classes like fibre optics and things that will make the future work? Does the government, let me put it this way, does any household keep all its old assets when it's wanting new ones? No, it says, I don't need this little house anymore, I want to get a better one, I'm going to sell the old one and I'm going to invest it in new ones. And so the mixed ownership model was a clear statement to the public of this country that a lot of the old assets don't need to be owned by the government anymore, don't need to be. But what we do need is a new class of assets, and fibre optic is certainly one of them. Better motorway systems is certainly another, roads of national significance. I just plead again to the members on the other side. Getting a new leader won't help you. What will help you is focusing on outcomes and dropping the dogma about how you deliver it.
I call the honourable... Sorry.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.